Hi everybody. In the modern landscape of global supply chains, purchasing and supply management professionals are no longer limited to negotiating with domestic suppliers. The persistent chase of cost efficiency, quality optimization, and supply chain resilience has driven organizations to source raw materials, components, and services from across the globe, spanning Asia, Europe, Africa, Latin America, and the Middle East. The reality places international negotiation at the very heart of this purchasing function. International negotiation in the context of supply management refers to structured process through which buyers and suppliers from different nations, different cultures, and different legal systems arrive at mutually accepted terms governing the procurement of goods and services. The risks are high. A poorly managed international supplier negotiation can result in unfavorable contract terms, can result in supply disruptions, quality failures, or severe damage to the strategic supplier relationship. This presentation examines the complexities, barriers, and competencies central to effective international negotiation for supply management professionals. When purchasing professionals go beyond domestic sourcing, they encounter a more complex negotiating environment. Each of the following dimensions introduces unique challenges to the supplier negotiation process. First, language. In global sourcing, language barriers are among the most immediate and major challenges. A procurement officer negotiating with first-tier supplier in South Korea, a contract manufacturer in Vietnam, or a raw material producer in Brazil must navigate not only translation but the diverse commercial vocabularies and legal terminologies and interpretive norms that go with each language. Misunderstanding in contract language regarding delivery terms, quality specifications, or penalty clauses can result in costly supply failures or legal disputes. Second, customs. Business customs govern the formalities and protocols of professional interaction. In Japan, for instance, the formal exchange of business cards carries significant symbolic weight, and failing to observe this custom can signal disrespect to a potential supplier. Also, in Middle East, extended social dialogue precedes business discussion, and attempting to accelerate directly to contract terms may be perceived as impolite or untrustworthy. Supply managers must treat supplier relationship management as a culturally sensitive venture. Third, laws and regulatory framework. Procurement contracts operating across national boundaries are subject to the commercial laws of multiple authorities. Issues such as Incoterms interpretation, dispute resolution mechanisms, intellectual property protection for exclusive specification, and compliance with international trade regulations are all affected by laws and regulations that might be different from one country to another. Fourth, culture. And here, cultural values shape fundamental assumptions about negotiation itself, whether it is transactional or relational, positional, or interest-based, short-term or long-term in orientation. Supply managers who fail to appreciate these differences may unintentionally push away key suppliers or misinterpret signals about suppliers' commitment and flexibilities. Collectively, these factors mean that international supplier negotiations require significantly more preparation time, broader pre-negotiation research, and longer horizon for relationship development compared to domestic procurement activities. For purchasing and supply management practitioners, the barriers to effective international negotiation translate directly into procurement risks. Each obstacles identified here has specific practical implications for the supply management function. First, miscommunication due to language. In procurement, language-based miscommunication can have severe operational and financial consequences. Consider a purchase order in which the term delivery by the end of month is interpreted by a supplier in China as the end of the physical reporting month rather than the calendar month, or where, for example, acceptable quality level is understood differently by each party due to vague or unclear translation of technical specification. Such errors can trigger delivery delays and invoice disputes. Purchasing professionals must ensure that all contractual languages are precisely translated, legally verified, and mutually understood. Second, time orientation. Monochronic cultures who treat time as a tangible and limited resource, often phrased as time is money, typically like Germany, Switzerland, and North America. In these procurement environments, they treat deadlines, lead times, and supply schedules as binding commitments. On the other hand, polychronic cultures, common across Latin America, Africa, and part of Asia, take a more flexible view of time. A supply manager used to just-in-time delivery expectations may experience significant tension when negotiating supplier agreements with partners who do not share the same urgency around schedule commitments. These differences must be explicitly discussed and incorporated into performance matrix. Third, cultural differences. Negotiating styles vary greatly. Chinese suppliers, for example, often prefer extended relationship building before committing to terms and may interpret aggressive positional bargaining as a threat to the relationship. On the other hand, some Northern European suppliers prefer direct, fact-based discussions with rapid movements toward agreement. Supply managers must adjust their negotiation approach to the cultural context of each supplier. Also, a purchasing team may invest significant time in negotiations only to discover that the supplier's representatives lack the authority to final pricing or delivery terms or quality commitments, and that all proposals must be approved by senior management or a parent company in another country. This is particularly common when negotiating with government-owned organizations or subsidiaries of larger multinational corporations. Supply managers must map their suppliers' decision-making hierarchy in advance and ensure that the suitable levels of authority are represented at the negotiation table. Finally, need for acknowledgeable translator. In international procurement, translators must have not only the linguistic fluency, but deep familiarity with the supply chain terminologies, Incoterm, quality standards such as ISO, Six Sigma, and industry-specific technical language. A translator unfamiliar with the differences between consignment stock and vendor managed inventory, or who cannot accurately render a warranty clause in Mandarin language, represents a significant risk to the integrity of any supplier agreement. Culture shock is a phenomenon that supply management professionals operating in international procurement roles must acknowledge and proactively manage. When a purchasing manager visits a supplier's facility in unfamiliar culture environment, whether traveling to negotiate with a textile manufacturer in Bangladesh or an electronic supplier in Taiwan, or even a chemical producer in Germany, their established cognitive plans for interpreting professional behavior, assessing suppliers' credibility, and evaluating negotiation process may become temporary and unreliable. A procurement professional used to a transparent, rule-based supplier relationship may encounter environment where personal relationship, like wasta, are more determinative of business outcomes than the formal policies or competitive pricing. This can challenge deeply held beliefs about fairness and ethical procurement practice, creating internal conflict and uncertainty. Also, elevated emotions. The combination of travel fatigue or tiredness, unfamiliar environments, time zone differences, and high stake nature of supplier negotiations can amplify emotional responses, leading to impatience over sensitivity to perceive um, offense or quickly uh, provide concessions to just relieve any discomfort they are facing. Also, they may encounter anxiety, um, and that's because uncertainty about supplier intention, unfamiliarity with local business norms, and the fear of making culturally offensive error can generate anxiety that might affect the supply manager's ability to think strategically and advocate effectively for their organization's procurement objectives. Um, Also, a negotiator experiencing disorientation may misread supplier signals, interpreting polite deflections as agreement or silence as rejection, leading to miscalculated concessions, premature clause, or missed opportunities to probe for better terms. At the contract level, confusion arises from cultural shock can result in misaligned understanding of agreed terms, which only become apparent upon contract execution, a particularly costly outcome in complex, high-value supply agreements. Organizations can mitigate these risks through pre-departure cultural briefs or through cross-cultural training programs and the deployment of culturally experienced procurement team members to support lead negotiation in unfamiliar markets. The most effective international negotiators consistently demonstrate a specific clusters of competencies that enable them to defeat cultural and linguistic barriers. These characteristics are not incidental, they are developed through deliberate professional developments and practical experience in global sourcing. For example, in supplier negotiation across Asia, the Middle East, and Latin America, relationship development often uh, precedes sizable negotiation. A purchasing manager who rushes to discuss pricing and delivery terms before an adequate foundation of trust has been established risks signaling that they view the supplier purely as a commodity source rather than a strategic partner. Therefore, patience is especially critical in multi-round negotiation, especially for high-value, long-term supply agreements such as those for capital equipment, sole sourcing components, or strategic raw materials, where the cost of relationship breakdown far exceeds the short-term gains of an aggressive bargaining approach. Also, international supply contracts are complex legal documents about pricing mechanisms, delivery terms, quality and inspection standards, intellectual properties right, and so on. A purchasing negotiator must command every dimension of the proposed agreement to prevent any ambiguity, resist suppliers' pushback that change terms, and ensure compliance with their organization's procurement policy and legal requirements. Also, honest and polite attitude. The long-term orientation of a strategic relationship make integrity essential. A supplier who perceives a buyer as manipulative or disrespectful will be less likely to offer special pricing or invest in collaborative product developments. Cross-cultural courtesy expressed in cultural appropriate way is an investment in supplier goodwill and supply chain resilience. Familiarity with foreign cultures and customs. For supply managers, this means understanding not only general culture norms, but the specific business culture of the supplier's industry and region. This includes the knowledge of local public holidays, which might affect the production schedule. Also, the significance of gift-giving protocols, the role of hierarchy in the supplier decision-making, and the cultural norms around hospitality that govern site visits and plant tours. Furthermore, recognition that common words may have different meanings. In procurement, this caution is operationally critical. Terms such as confirmed order, delivery date, standard quality, sample approved, and penalty for delay. All of them can carry different operational and legal meaning in different cultural and legal contexts. Supply managers must never assume that because a supplier has verbally agreed to a term, they have understood it in the same way. Therefore, written confirmation and mutual definition of key terms are essential safeguards. So, what are the cautions when negotiating overseas? First, do not assume others think and negotiate like you. This is a foundational caution for any global procurement professional. Effective international purchasing requires behavioral flexibility, the ability to adapt one's negotiation style to the cultural context without abandoning essential objectives. Also, danger of stereotyping or oversimplifying. While cultural research provides useful frameworks, for example, Hofstede dimensions of cultural dimensions or national dimensions, applying them is strictly to individual suppliers is counterproductive. A Chinese supplier who has spent 20 years exporting to Western markets may negotiate in a manner far more consistent with the Western commercial norms than with traditional Chinese bargaining customs. Supply managers who approach every interaction through a fixed cultural template risk misreading their counterparts and missing opportunities for creative, mutual beneficial agreements. Therefore, even with a single country or a single company, purchasing professionals will encounter variations in individual negotiating styles, risk tolerance, communication preferences, and level of decision-making authority. A purchasing manager at a Japanese multinational may show a very different negotiating style from a founder-managed Japanese SMEs, despite sharing the same national cultural background. However, general tendency do exist. Cultural intelligence framework, as the one we discussed here, Hofstede cultural dimensions that include dimensions like power distance, individualism, uncertainty avoidance, and so on, provide supply managers with evidence-based probabilistic insights into supplier behavior. These frameworks should inform pre-negotiation preparation, supplier relationship strategies, and cross-cultural training programs, while always being applied with contextual sensitivity and willingness to revise assumptions based on direct observations. To conclude, the globalization of supply chains has made international negotiation a critical core competency for purchasing and supply management professionals. The barriers explored in this presentation, including linguistics, cultural, psychological, and institutional, are not theoretical abstraction. They are daily realities faced by procurement teams sourcing from global supplier networks. Organizations that invest in developing culturally intelligent purchasing professionals establish strong cross-cultural negotiation protocols and build strategic supplier relationships across diverse markets will achieve a significant competitive advantage. This will allow them to get more favorable supply terms, greater supply chain resilience, faster innovation through supplier collaboration, and stronger protection against geopolitical and market disruptions.